Worried about what kind of vice president Sarah Palin would be? Polls suggest you probably are, but the big worry might not be her level of experience, knowledge, or verbal acuity. It might be her wildly troubling Dick Cheney tendencies. At last night's debate, Governor Palin made a jaw-dropping proposal suggesting that the powers of the vice presidency ought to be expanded. Expanded from what Dick Cheney made them?
I'm thankful that the Constitution would allow a bit more authority given to the Vice President also, if that Vice President so chose to exert it in working with the Senate. Our founding fathers were very wise there in allowing through the Constitution much flexibility there in the office of the Vice President.
More power, much flexibility? As most folks read it, there's precisely one constitutional duty that comes with the office you seek, Governor, and it is to serve as President of the Senate. That's it. It's in ink, on parchment, all 1787 style-y. No matter what Dick Cheney says about belonging neither fully in the executive nor the legislative branch. See, Governor Palin, that was just Cheney's ploy to avoid investigations and oversight. Stuff you maybe also like to avoid. This is genuinely scary stuff to me. But maybe it's just me? Joining us now to try to talk me down on this is Jonathan Turley. He's a professor of law at George Washington University. Professor Turley, thank you for your time tonight.
Hi, Rachel.
Here's your chance to try to talk me down on this. Tell me it is not possible for a Palin vice presidency to take on a larger remit than the Cheney vice presidency.
Well, it ruins a perfectly good job. You know, in the Constitution, this is a great job. No work, big house, big salary. I don't know why she wants to ruin it with actual work. But you're correct. The only duties of a vice president, if you really get down to the concrete aspects, is to break ties in the Senate. Other than that, it's a pretty slim portfolio. Now, taking the best possible reading of the first statement, she may have been suggesting that a vice president has powers derived from the president, and the president can give them essentially a portfolio of duties to do. In fact, she says that she's an energy expert, much like the man she wants to replace, and I expect she would claim the same energy portfolio. But some of her statements are obviously just simply wrong. I mean, the framers that she referred to did not want to create sort of night at the improv, where everyone is allowed to reinvent themselves. To the contrary, they were sticklers in terms of people staying within the lines of their defined duties. They viewed it as very dangerous when people tried to reinvent themselves. That's the whole point of the system they created, of a separation of powers and checks and balances. This is a system that's idiot-proof, and we've tested that, but the only rule that can't be broken is you can't really break the rules. You can't go outside those lines. You stay within the lines, you stay doing your duties, and it's a system that works pretty darn well.
When she says that she wants to exercise a bit more authority, is it possible that she means something specifically about the way she would preside in the Senate? Is it possible? Is there a legislative wish list that even Cheney's office hasn't been able to redeem at this point?
Well, she does seem to believe that she can continue this effort by Dick Cheney to reinvent his office. But the interesting thing is that Dick Cheney didn't reinvent his office. Courts have routinely ruled against him and the president in all of their improvisational efforts with the Constitution. What Dick Cheney was doing was asserting the maximum amount of authority he could have while denying all the responsibilities that he has under statutes. The courts did not allow that. And so there's a bit of a disconnect in what you hear from Governor Palin. It's as if she's not aware that the courts have really swatted back these efforts and have in fact reinforced the constitutional limits on that office. And what concerns me most, Rachel, is that Governor Palin is refusing to comply with a subpoena issued by her state legislature in the so-called Troopergate scandal. And I have very little interest in the scandal. What I have an interest in is the simple fact that you have a legitimately issued subpoena that a court, just shortly before the debate, said was a valid exercise of the legislative branch in her state. She has simply refused to comply. Even her husband, who doesn't hold an official position, has refused to comply with the subpoena. I know of no case in the history of this republic when a president or vice presidential candidate has sought the office while refusing to comply with a constitutionally issued subpoena. It's a very frightful thing, and it's something that Governor Palin's going to have to deal with. She now has a judge who says that's a valid subpoena.
We called a number of reporters today in Alaska who have been covering her tenure in Alaska, and several of them suggested, when we asked the question, have you seen anything Cheney-esque in the way Palin has behaved in Alaska, several of them suggested, well, she did try to shield her emails from scrutiny by calling an executive privilege, and she is defying these subpoenas. To hear her say that she wants an even bigger job as vice president than Cheney has taken is chilling. You have definitely not talked me down about her ambitions, although her ability to pull it off may still leave me with some comfort. Jonathan Turley, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot, Rachel.